Hi everyone, I am going to show you a quick tutorial on how to connect a MIDI controller keyboard to your Yamaha keyboard or any other keyboard. In this setup, we have this Arturia KeyLab 49 Essentials MK3 as the MIDI controller keyboard, and also we have Yamaha PSR SX700. What you are going to do largely differs on the capabilities of your keyboards. For example, now my intention is to control the sounds of this Yamaha keyboard using this Arturia controller keyboard on top. This is the backside panel of this Arturia keyboard. Here you can see there is a MIDI output port and this power output port. Now this MIDI output port is a 5-pin standard DIN connector, and this power output port is a USB-C port, and this keyboard requires at least 5 watts, 5 volts and 550 milliamperes to power this controller keyboard. There are some other controller keyboards which are having different power supply unit specification, so be very careful about the power requirements of your controller keyboard, otherwise using an inappropriate PSU can damage your controller keyboard. Now this is how I have connected the controller keyboard to my Yamaha keyboard. This grey color cable is the power cable of the controller keyboard. I have connected that to the USB port of the Yamaha keyboard. I can safely operate this controller keyboard from this port because this USB port of the Yamaha keyboard can supply 5 volts and 550 milliamperes. Please check the specifications of your USB port if you are powering your controller keyboard using any other USB port like this. If you don't have any capabilities in your keyboard to power a USB device, you can use a separate power supply. Now the MIDI cable running from the MIDI out port of the controller keyboard is connected to the MIDI in port of this Yamaha keyboard. You can see it clearly here. For this you need a standard MIDI cable. So there is nothing specifically to do to power on this controller keyboard. When you just plug the USB cable, this one gets turned on. But the turning on procedure of your other controller keyboards can be different. Please check about that. Now this is the most important step. You need to configure your host keyboard to receive the MIDI input from the controller keyboard. Now these steps can differ from different keyboard models, but the concepts are always same. So please refer to the manual of your keyboard to how to configure the MIDI receiving settings. Now here I go to the menu of this keyboard. Here in this second page I can see the MIDI settings. There I have this receive tab. This is the section where we configure how this Yamaha keyboard behaves when we get the MIDI signals. Now you can see this receive monitor. Now this Yamaha keyboard is capable of receiving MIDI signals from 2 different ports. One is the USB host port where we can connect a printer cable from a computer. Next one is the MIDI port that I showed previously. Right? Now you can see the port 1 is for USB connection and the port 2 is for USB 2. Port 1 is the one we need to configure because you can see port 1 is the MIDI or USB 1. There in MIDI, you know that MIDI data is usually transmitted via 16 channels. Now in this tutorial I am not going to teach about MIDI, which is a broad subject, and this keyboard is having 3 keyboard parts, right, or sections. Now these buttons are for controlling these different sections. Right 1, right 2, right 3 and left. There are 4 parts. If I want to layer three sounds, I can simply turn on these buttons and they lit up. So 3 sounds are occurring together like this. Okay, I'm going to switch off this and go back to the MIDI settings. Again MIDI. There, now I have configured data coming from the port 1 channel 1 should route to right 3 part. Port 1 channel 2 should route to right 2 part. And similarly, there are several other configurations. Now in this keyboard, if you click on this part, I can configure what is the sound output section of this keyboard with respect to the MIDI signals coming from different channels of the relevant port. Okay, now I want to sound this studio strings which is in the part 3 or the right 3 section of this keyboard. There, what I have done is, going back to the MIDI, channel 1 from the port 1, that means our MIDI input is connected to the right 3 part of this keyboard, which is assigned a string voice like this. Now again, these steps differ from the type of control keyboard you are using. You need to set the output of this controller keyboard for that particular channel. Now we know that channel 1 from this keyboard or this MIDI output is connected to the right 3 part or that string voice. Now this is how you select the MIDI output channel of this Arturia keyboard. You have to press and hold this MIDI channel button and you should press the first key of this keyboard. Right, now here you can see what are the different channels assigned to different notes of this keyboard. So by using this MIDI channel button and this key combination, you can easily change the output channel of this controller keyboard. Now let me play something and see. Now you can see and hear the string sound is happening when I press this keyboard. So that is because of I have configured the MIDI output channel and also the relevant port to the relevant part of that keyboard. So that is a simple example where you can route the sounding notes from this kind of controller keyboard to a Yamaha keyboard or any other host keyboard like this. As I said, the concepts are mainly similar if you are using another type of Yamaha keyboard or any other standalone keyboard like this. Not only the sound, I am not going to explain these steps. If you learn to configure this Arturia keyboard using their own software, Control Center, you can even control the volume of the keyboard parts using this. Now I have assigned this fader to the MIDI volume control change message of the keyboard below. Similar to Arturia MIDI Control Center, different controller keyboards can have their different configuration software. So please refer to the user manuals of the respective controller keyboards for reference. Now advantage of this setup is you can easily extend a keyboard for your live performances using the same sounds, same workflow you know in a standalone keyboard like this. And this is a very lightweight setup. You just need the MIDI out cable and this can be powered using the same USB port of the host keyboard. So you have just extended the keybed of this to a next level and still you are controlling the sounds of this host keyboard using this, which is familiar for you. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please comment below.